3 months after my wife brought the sponsored student to live with us, I found a bottle of lubricant in her purse. I didn't cause a scene. Instead, I secretly replaced the lubricant with superglue. That night, my wife and the sponsored student both ended up in the hospital. 1. Staring at the gaudily packaged bottle in front of me, I felt like I'd been plunged into an icy abyss, my body trembling uncontrollably. I picked it up, examining it over and over, hoping it wasn't what I thought it was. But the result from scanning it with my phone was chillingly clear. It was the extra strong kind, not cheap, and it had been opened and used. There was a faint scent of chrysanthemum. Victoria Miller and I had been in a loving relationship for over a decade and married for 7 years. Although we were childless, we had never fought, and she had truly fulfilled the role of a devoted wife. In the 10 years since I started my business, growing it from a small studio of a few people to a corporation with over 1,000 employees, she had always meticulously cared for my daily needs. She was, by all accounts, the perfect wife, the perfect CEO's spouse. But in the face of this irrefutable evidence, I had to admit it. Victoria Miller had cheated on me. In all our years together, we had never been this wild. While she was in the shower, I opened her purse with trembling hands. Inside were some daily essentials and her phone. I opened the phone and skillfully entered my own birthday as the password. To my surprise, it unlocked. Puzzled, I tapped on her messaging app. The pinned chat was with me, labeled husband. I scrolled down and found only normal conversations with her friends. Aside from that, there were regular money transfers to her parents, sometimes 500, sometimes 1,000, with the largest being a single transfer of 10,000. In the past, I wouldn't have cared. She was my supportive partner, and that amount of money was just pocket change to me. But now I took a screenshot of the transfer history, just in case. Could I have been wrong? I was confused. Victoria's phone was too normal. I couldn't find a single incriminating trace. Wait, why wasn't the sponsored student's name here? I quickly noticed the anomaly. The sponsored student, Ethan Reed, was someone Victoria had recommended 3 years ago. His family was poor, but he was a diligent student. Victoria proposed sponsoring him one-on-one, and I had agreed at the time, giving her a fixed sum of money each month to handle it. But the name Ethan Reed was nowhere to be found in her contacts. That was clearly not normal. I suddenly remembered 3 months ago when Victoria had suggested Ethan move in with us. Her reason was that he had just graduated from college, hadn't found a job, and had no money for rent. I had agreed without a second thought. Ethan would often come to our villa to help with cleaning and cooking, never missing a beat. Now, it seemed this had all been premeditated. I let out a cold laugh and finally found another phone, one I had never seen before, tucked away in a hidden compartment of her purse. I entered my birthday. It didn't open. I entered Victoria's birthday. It didn't open either. Finally, I entered Ethan Reed's birthday. Sure enough, it unlocked. My heart seized. With a trembling finger, I tapped on the messaging app. There was only one contact named my sweetheart baby. The chat history inside sent me plunging back into that icy abyss. 2. January 1st, the day Victoria brought the sponsored student Ethan Reed to live with us. Sis, I can finally be with you. It feels so good to see you every day. Ethan, me too. On your way back, stop by a pharmacy and pick something up for me. Sis, won't we get caught? Sincere is just upstairs in his room, scared face emoji. Don't worry about him. He sleeps like a log. February 14th, Valentine's Day. Victoria and I had taken couples photos and enjoyed a candlelit dinner. Ethan, when will you be home? I can't stand the sight of his potbelly, it's disgusting. You're so much more handsome. Sis, you didn't spend any time with me today, sad face emoji. I have a business trip in a couple of days. You should come with me. Okay, February 20th. Sis, when is Sincere's business trip? I miss you so much. It's only been a few days. I just can't. February 28th, our wedding anniversary. We took a photo together and put it in a frame in the bedroom downstairs. Sis, when can we move into the master bedroom? Reading these explicit and nauseating messages, my hands and feet went cold. Was this really the woman who had been by my side for over a decade? Could these words truly have come from the mouth of a devoted wife? I couldn't understand it. She cooked for me on time every day. She even hand-washed my underwear and socks, saying the machine didn't get them clean enough and could harbor bacteria. My friends all said Victoria was the best woman, the best wife they had ever seen. But reality slapped me hard across the face. This woman was not just a poor wife, she was a two-timing tramp. My stomach churned and I ran to the trash can, vomiting violently. The last message in the chat, Ethan, come up early tonight. 3. Staring at those glaring words, my gaze turned ice cold. Victoria, let the games begin. If you enjoy this kind of drama, then I'll play along until the very end. After photographing the chat logs as evidence, I replaced the lubricant in her purse with super glue. This was the extra strong kind, too. It wouldn't just stick shoes together. It could glue a door shut. You like thrills? I'll give you the thrill of a lifetime. After I had done all this, I put her secret phone back into the hidden compartment, untouched, and arranged everything in her purse exactly as it was. The sound of the doorknob turning came from the bathroom. Victoria emerged, her wet hair casually pinned up, wearing a nightgown and perfume. Definitely not for me. She glanced at me, busy reading a book, and seeing nothing amiss, she let out a soft sigh of relief. Honey, stop reading and get some rest. I nodded. Any conversation with her now just made me sick. I made you some calming tea. It'll help you sleep well, she said, bringing in a cup of pale yellow tea with a few rose petals floating on top. So that was it all became clear. Every night before bed, Victoria would make me a cup of calming tea. All these years I thought I was just a good sleeper, out like a light until morning. I just occasionally woke up with a headache. It turned out she was putting something in it. Be a good boy, honey. Drink it up so you can sleep, she said, her eyes fixed on me as if to ensure I drank it. How laughable. I used to think this was her way of showing she cared. The irony was bitter. I'm craving some grapes. Could you go get them for me? I said, making up an excuse to get her out of the room. The moment she left, I poured the tea out the window. When she returned and saw the empty cup, a flash of excitement crossed her eyes. She then started peeling grapes for me, placing them one by one on a plate. Honey, I'm going to go blow dry my hair. You should get some rest. I nodded, pretending to be drowsy, and then turned off the light. About 5 minutes later, Victoria tiptoed into the room. I feigned sleep, remaining perfectly still. She patted my face. Honey? Honey? I let out a soft snore, pretending to be in a deep sleep. Seeing that I was unresponsive, she seemed to nod in satisfaction in the darkness. Then she left the room, taking her purse with her. 4. Ethan hadn't left the house for the past 2 days. He lived on the first floor and rarely came up. It was only 9 o'clock. It seemed they couldn't wait. I tiptoed to the door of Ethan's room and turned on my phone's voice recorder. Immediately, I heard heavy breathing from inside. I was worried you weren't coming over tonight. That was Ethan's voice. Ethan, I promised I would, Victoria's voice replied. This was followed by the sound of rustling. Victoria urged impatiently. Sis, are you sure Sincere won't find out? Ethan's voice was filled with hesitation and anxiety. Victoria, however, was completely unconcerned. What's there to be afraid of? I gave him a sleeping pill. He's sleeping like a log right now. Her tone was firm. Hee, that's great. A strange pang shot through my heart. My fists clenched and I wanted to burst in and beat them senseless, but that would be letting them off too easily. A beating wouldn't be enough. I wanted their lives. I couldn't be impulsive now. Sis, I'm a little scared. Ethan's innocent act seemed to strangely excite Victoria. I'm not scared, so what are you afraid of? You're a lucky man. But I'm still a little scared. Ethan's words once again spurred Victoria's impulse. Relax. Okay, sis, you be careful then, Ethan said softly. Then came the sound of a bag being rummaged through. No need to be scared, Victoria cooed. Don't pour it all in, what the I... Victoria's shriek echoed through the room, a scream like a pig being slaughtered. Ethan, did you pour the wrong one?
No, I don't think so. This must be the effect.
Ethan leaned in closer. At that moment, 2 miserable screams filled the air. Sis, what the hell is this stuff? We're stuck together, Ethan cried out, sucking in sharp breaths of air. Don't you fucking move, Victoria screamed wretchedly, completely disregarding me, supposedly asleep on the 2nd floor. Sis, I think this is glue. Ethan's voice was choked with sobs. The intense pain flooded his nerves. Every movement felt like his skin was being ripped off. Should we try pouring some hot water on it? An even more horrific scream followed. It's bleeding. Quick, call 911. I walked away from the door with a cold smile. Half an hour later, an ambulance, sirens wailing, pulled up to the villa. The 2 of them, in a very bizarre position, were carried out on a stretcher. The paramedics and nurses standing by were stunned into silence. One of the nurses had been in the job for years and had never seen anything like it. It was utterly mortifying. 5. The next morning, I immediately contacted a private investigator and a lawyer. I had the PI closely monitor the 2 of them, while the lawyer prepared the necessary documents to file for divorce. I also had the property management company come and install hidden cameras in every room. Simultaneously, I froze all of Victoria's and Ethan's bank accounts. I was going to make sure they didn't even have the money for surgery. Sure enough, by the next afternoon, Victoria called me. Honey, why is my card frozen? My voice was cold. There's a small issue with the company's finances. It'll be unlocked in a couple of days. Why, do you need a lot of money right now? Victoria's voice was hoarse. Not really, it's just... I got hit by a car last night when I went out to meet Kevin. I'm in the hospital. I feigned alarm. What? Are you hurt? I'm on my way to see you. Of course I had to go see them. I wanted to witness their miserable state for myself. Hearing that I was coming, Victoria panicked. Honey, it's nothing serious, just a few scrapes. I can just hire a nurse for a couple of days. You're busy with work, you don't need to come. I let out a cold laugh and agreed. Afraid of being discovered, Victoria and Ethan checked out of the hospital that same afternoon, but their injuries were far from healed. Their way of walking was bizarre. Victoria was hunched over, and Ethan walked with his legs pressed tightly together. Their faces were as white as sheets, and they were carrying large bags of medication. It looked like they'd used a credit card to pay for it. I almost didn't recognize them. Seeing me, they forced ugly smiles onto their faces, wincing and sucking in sharp breaths of air. How are you? Nothing too serious, I hope, I asked, feigning concern. And nothing serious, Victoria said, her face pale. If there's nothing wrong, then go make dinner, I said, getting up and leaving the living room. Victoria and Ethan exchanged a glance, their eyes flashing with anger and resentment, but they could only swallow their rage and head to the kitchen. Since Victoria was a housewife and Ethan occasionally helped out, we had never hired a maid. I had no intention of eating anything they cooked. I just wanted to torment them. Watching their strange, pained movements, I couldn't help but want to laugh. Don't worry, this is just the beginning. I have all the time in the world to play with you. Victoria, naturally, didn't want to stay in the kitchen, leaving Ethan there alone. A series of clatters and bangs came from the kitchen. It seemed Ethan's body couldn't take it anymore. Once dinner was ready, I made up an excuse about having to work late at the office and left the villa. Sitting in my car, I pulled up the high-definition feed from the hidden cameras on my phone. Sis, what the hell is going on? You don't think Sincere found out, do you? Ethan asked, his face pale as he leaned on a chair for support. No way. He would have blown up by now. It must have been that crooked shop owner. A swindler. Victoria was in no better shape. Her wounds hadn't healed, and the tearing pain made every step an ordeal. Whatever, just help me apply the medicine first. All right, Ethan nodded with difficulty. In the bedroom, the scene on the screen shocked even me. I hadn't realized the superglue would be so potent. The top layer of their skin was completely gone, revealing a raw, red wound. Every movement caused fresh blood to well up. It was a gruesome sight, hard to watch. Half an hour later, the two of them staggered out of the bathroom. Looking at them, a bold idea came to mind. What would happen if I put something in their medicine? I decided to act on it immediately. I drove to a supermarket and bought a bottle of chili oil, a bottle of Sichuan peppercorn oil, and a bottle of mustard powder. They were all high purity, premium imports. The chili oil, in particular, was made from Indian ghost peppers. When I returned less than 2 hours later, Ethan was surprised to see me, his eyes darting around nervously. "Sincere, you're back." I nodded and went into the bedroom. Victoria was lying on the bed like a limp dog, her body trembling. A strange odor filled the air. My guess was her sphincter muscle had been torn, and she was having trouble controlling her bowels. Clearly, Victoria's injuries were more severe, and they were internal. These two were really pushing themselves to avoid being discovered by me. Didn't they know that leaving the hospital at this stage could easily lead to infection? I feigned concern. "Honey, where are you hurt?" I deliberately gave her a pat on the behind. Victoria instantly jumped up in pain. "Honey, what are you doing?" I looked puzzled. "I'm just concerned about you. You said you were injured last night. Let me see the wound." Victoria hastily pulled the covers over herself. "No, it's fine. I just need to rest for a bit." "But honey, I'm worried about you," I said with a malicious grin, sitting down on the bed, bouncing up and down forcefully. Victoria let out a pig-like squeal and, in her struggle, pushed me away, but she used too much force and crashed into the nightstand, immediately cutting a bloody gash on her head. She seemed oblivious to the new injury, just shivering uncontrollably, her lips white. "Honey, that looks like a pretty serious scrape," I said grimly. Victoria's face was ashen. It is a bit serious. Honey, I'm a little tired today. Can we do this another time?" Her voice held a note of pleading. I nodded helplessly. Then I took out a few tubes of cream I had prepared earlier from my bag and placed them on her pillow. "This is a special cream I got from Professor Hamilton," I said. "It works wonders on abrasions, chemical burns from glue, broken skin, all sorts of external injuries. It's imported, over $1,000 a tube. Most people can't get their hands on it." When I said the words chemical burns from glue, a distinct glint appeared in Victoria's eyes. "Thank you, honey. You're so good to me." "Then take a tube to Kevin, too. I have some urgent business at the office I need to take care of. I won't be back tonight," I said with a sinister smile. Victoria's mind was completely focused on the words chemical burns from glue. She nodded eagerly, practically wishing I would leave immediately. 6. Back in my car, I pulled up the surveillance feed. I watched as Victoria rushed to Ethan's room. "Ethan, come quick, I got some imported medicine." At the mention of imported medicine, Ethan couldn't help but shiver, remembering the previous bad experience. "Sis, are you sure?" Victoria nodded firmly. I scanned it with my phone. "It's definitely imported, and the package hasn't been opened. He got it through his connections." "There shouldn't be a problem," Victoria said. I watched them go into the bathroom. Ethan's wound was already red and swollen, and many of the broken areas of skin had turned a dark color. I had to admire his tolerance for pain. Victoria was in even worse shape. Her sphincter muscle was almost completely non-functional. The mix of yellow and red, combined with the smell of the ointment, made even Ethan cover his nose and mouth. Victoria was horrified by her own condition. It was getting worse, clearly. The medicine from the hospital wasn't helping much. "Quick, help me apply it," Victoria nearly cried. How could she face anyone like this? She was filled with rage, wanting to find the swindler who sold her the fake product and tear him to pieces. Ethan carefully peeled back the scabs on her wounds and then twisted open the tube of cream I had given them. Watching this, a faint smile played on my lips. "Sis, why is the opening on this bottle so... And it has a pungent smell," Ethan said, confused. "Never mind the smell, just pour it on already," Victoria urged, her voice full of anxiety. "This bottle is for you," Victoria said, twisting open another tube. I remembered filling that particular one with chili oil. Oh, okay, thanks," Ethan nodded repeatedly. As he spoke, Ethan poured the entire contents of the tube onto the wound and even rubbed it in with a cotton swab. The next second, both of their bodies jolted violently. They let out blood-curdling screams. "Ethan, what did you put on me?" I don't know." Victoria's veins bulged, and large beads of cold sweat popped out on her forehead. She screamed, practically roaring. "Quick, call 911. I haven't yet," Ethan said, pouring the contents of his bottle onto his own wound. A scream even more intense than Victoria's erupted. Ethan collapsed to the floor in agony, writhing. Pain, excruciating pain. The nerve density in those two areas was completely different. Ethan clawed desperately at himself, the intense agony nearly causing him to pass out. This is chili oil, Victoria, you bitch," Ethan roared. Victoria was stunned. It was him. He's the one behind all of this. "Just call 911. I'm going to die." Ethan held out his blood-soaked hand, his trembling fingers trying to unlock his phone. But his hand was too slippery. He couldn't unlock it. Finally, he roared, "Hey, assistant, call 911, I'm here. Call 911, I'm here." "F*** you," Ethan, enraged, smashed his phone on the ground, shattering it to pieces. In the end, it was Victoria who managed to call for an ambulance. As the ambulance, sirens blaring, drove into the neighborhood, people from the high-rise buildings poked their heads out of their windows. An ambulance had come for the second day in a row, making them curious, especially since a lot of noise was coming from the villa. The doctor and nurse who arrived were the same ones from yesterday. The doctor frowned, his eyes filled with disgust and revulsion. "You were just in the hospital yesterday, and you're playing these games again today. Do you two not want those parts anymore?" The doctor, suppressing his nausea, examined them briefly and said, "Well, it's necrotic now. The nerves are probably severely damaged. And you," he said to Ethan, "stop scratching. If you keep scratching, it'll be completely ruined. Let's get them on the gurney. Notify the hospital to prepare for surgery." The doctor urged the paramedics to lift them. A young nurse pouted and muttered to herself, "People are so wild these days. Is chili oil really that fun?" The ambulance sped out of the neighborhood, its sirens wailing, as many people watched from their windows. 7. I called my lawyer and private investigator to check on their progress. The PI said he had dug up everything on both of them, even finding a video of their first date. He would send the complete file to my email shortly. My lawyer had the lawsuit papers ready. The evidence of Victoria's affair was solid, and since she didn't work and had made no contribution to the company, he was 100% confident he would win the case. Satisfied, I paid them both their fees and then opened my email to review the files. It turned out their entire relationship was a premeditated scheme. Ethan was no poor student. He just bore a slight resemblance to Victoria's deceased ex-lover, her one that got away. And Ethan was no saint. He had been using my money to pose as a rich kid in college, going through several girlfriends. He was also involved in online gambling and was hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, with loan sharks hounding him daily. No wonder he moved into my house right after graduation. He was hiding from his debts. Victoria had been very generous with him. Over the past few years, she had spent over $1 million on him. Among the records was also a series of secret transfers from Victoria to her younger brother, Kevin Miller, totaling over $1 million. I slammed my fist on the car seat, my face ashen. That bitch had spent so much of my money behind my back. Since you two are so in love, I'll make sure you're tied together forever. I let out a cold laugh and called my lawyer. I earned that money through hard work. I was damn well going to get it back. That night, Victoria called me dozens of times. I just blacklisted her number. I didn't have to guess. She was trying to get me to pay for their surgeries. They were both penniless now and couldn't afford it. Without payment, the hospital wouldn't operate. I decided to let them stew for a night, to let them really savor the experience. I checked into a hotel, ordered some barbecue and crawfish and a pitcher of beer. I had a wonderful meal, then turned off my phone and slept like a baby until morning. When I woke up, it was already 10 o'clock. I had slept incredibly well, feeling refreshed and clear-headed, much better than the groggy, headachy mornings I had been used to. I turned on my phone. It was still bombarded with calls from Victoria. The last few were from a landline marked with the name of the city's central hospital. Just then, the hospital's landline called again. I answered. "Is this Mr. Dawson?" "This is the emergency center at City Central Hospital." "Speaking," I replied. "Your family members, Ms. Miller and Mr. Reed, require emergency surgery. Could you please come to the hospital to handle the payment? There are also some forms that need your signature." The nurse's voice was urgent. "How are the patients?" I asked. "The situation is not optimistic. We may need to remove certain key organs. You can consult with the doctor when you arrive." I stroked my chin. "Removal of key organs, eh?" That sounded promising. By the time I arrived at the hospital, Victoria and Ethan had both fallen into a coma. Since no one had paid, they had only been given some simple bandages. The entire room was filled with a strange odor, and no nurse dared to stay inside. The doctor found me, his face grave. "Mr. Dawson, the condition of both patients is extremely serious. You need to be prepared. Due to the severity of the infection, especially with Miss Miller, the muscle tissue is completely necrotic and has started to putrefy. If we don't operate, it could lead to a fatal systemic infection. There is another option, which is to completely remove it and implant an artificial one. She might be bedridden for the rest of her life, but at least her life would be saved." I nodded. "Then remove it." I pointed to Ethan and asked, "What about him?" The doctor hesitated. "His situation is even more severe. It will likely require complete removal, otherwise severe rot will set in." "Cut his off too," I said casually. "But it's such a critical part. Shouldn't we ask for his consent?" I waved my hand. "He's in a coma. How can you ask him? I'm his family. Listen to me. Saving their lives is what matters." On the forms, my name was indeed listed under the family member section. I was glad I hadn't shown my hand yet, otherwise I wouldn't have been the one to sign these crucial papers. I swiftly signed my name on the documents, and the two of them were wheeled into the operating room. Watching their ashen faces slowly disappear into the emergency room, a smile crept onto my face. "Victoria, Ethan, I wish you the best of luck. And remember to thank me. I saved your lives." 8. Victoria woke up the next day. The surgery hadn't gone smoothly. The infected area was too large. The nurse had to come out twice more to get my signature on additional consent forms. The gist was that it was completely unsalvageable and required total removal. Ethan's surgery, on the other hand, had gone smoothly, though he was still asleep. "Honey, you're here," Victoria said, her eyes fluttering open weakly. The effects of the anesthesia were wearing off, and the pain was beginning to set in. I gave her a cold look and tossed the divorce papers onto her bed. "Let's get a divorce. You'll leave with nothing." Victoria's face turned white. "Honey, let me explain." "Explain what?" "The whole hospital knows what you two animals have been up to by tomorrow. I'll be the headline on every news site in the city," I roared, pointing at Ethan lying in the adjacent bed. "Honey, it was a moment of weakness. I swear I love you. I really do. Please forgive me. We've been together for over a decade. I know you have feelings for me too." Victoria's tears started streaming down her face, a pathetic weeping mess. "You love me, so you fool around with a sponsored student in our own home." "Victoria, do you take me for an idiot?" I was furious. I grabbed her by the collar, speaking through gritted teeth. "You like him, don't you? Fine, I'll grant you your wish. One of you without a front, the other without a back. You're a perfect match." Being lifted up pulled at her wounds. "Honey, let go." It hurt so much. A moment later, the meaning of my words seemed to sink in. She let out a piercing scream. What happened to me?" She reached behind her, only to feel a handful of blood. Her terrified screams woke Ethan. The first thing he heard was my comment about being without a front, without a back. He was weakly about to call out sincere, but then he noticed the change in his own body and let out a horrified shriek. My. It's gone. It's all gone. His expression shifted from horror to utter despair, a spectacular sight. In that instant, it was as if his entire world had collapsed. And collapsing with him, of course, was Victoria. "Sincere Dawson, what did you do to us?" Victoria shrieked in terror. I pulled out the pre-surgery consent forms and threw them in front of them. The infection was too severe. The doctors recommended total removal to save your lives. It was an emergency, so I had to sign. Ethan, you wouldn't want to see Victoria die just like that, would you? And Victoria wouldn't want to see Ethan die, would you? Victoria struggled and fell out of bed. Blood immediately pooled on the floor around her. The divorce papers landed right in front of her. The scene was so tragically ironic. "Sincere Dawson, you want a divorce? In your dreams, I'll die before I agree to it. Your disagreement is useless. My lawyer has already filed the lawsuit. Did you really think I didn't have proof of what you two were doing at home?" Victoria lay on the floor, her face ashen, sucking in sharp breaths of air. Sincere, you're so ruthless." I smiled. "If I weren't, I'd be the one lying in that bed right now." "Enjoy yourselves, you two." I smiled again and placed a fresh copy of the divorce agreement on the table. The first one was already soaked in blood. Ethan's face was livid, a look of complete desolation on it. He still hadn't processed what had happened. Then again, having your tools of the trade confiscated probably takes some time to get used to. 9. Just as I was about to leave, a commotion erupted outside. It turned out to be Victoria's parents, Walter and Brenda, and her brother Kevin, another pack of vampires. They had sucked more than a little blood from me over the years. Before I even saw them, I could hear Brenda arguing with a nurse. "What's wrong with this hospital? My daughter was brought in last night, and you haven't even operated yet," the nurse could only whisper. "The patient's fees haven't been paid in full. It's hospital policy. My son-in-law's loaded. You think he can't afford your little surgery fee? This is medical negligence. I'm going to sue you. Where's your supervisor? Get him here." "Now," Brenda yelled, quickly drawing a crowd. People looked at the family as if they were idiots. The story of Victoria's incident had already spread throughout the hospital. This family had some serious nerve. "Mom, keep it down," Kevin said, tugging on his mother's sleeve. His phone was displaying today's top trending news story, the sordid tale of Victoria and Ethan. "What do you know, you little brat? You have to make a scene for the hospital to appease you. How much do you think that surgery costs? We need to get back whatever we can. Isn't your brother-in-law's money your money?" Brenda slapped Kevin on the head, telling him to shut up. The commotion soon brought the doctor over. When they heard about Victoria's condition, they exploded. "What? You completely removed it? My daughter is only 30. You've sentenced her to a life of celibacy." "Oh, my poor daughter, ruined by a bunch of quack doctors." The doctor frowned. "Ma'am, you can't say that. Her condition was extremely critical. I don't care, you have to compensate us, or I'll report you to the medical board, that's right, and we'll expose you quacks online," Walter chimed in. The doctor's face was contorted with anger. He slammed a file onto his desk. "Look for yourselves, this is the pre-operative consent form." The risks were clearly stated, and the family member signed off on it. "We followed procedure. My name was indeed signed on the form. My sister is a freak now, neither a man nor a woman, and your hospital wants to shirk responsibility?" Kevin was furious too. "Keep your voice down, isn't this embarrassing enough?" Walter slapped Kevin on the head. While they were arguing with the doctor, Brenda's sharp eyes spotted Ethan's name and surgery bill. "Who is Ethan Reed? Why is your hospital overcharging us? You're billing my daughter for another patient's expenses?" Brenda seemed to have found a new angle of attack. She stood with her hands on her hips, her tone becoming more aggressive. The news that the hospital was billing her daughter for someone else's surgery quickly drew a crowd of other patients' families. Some, not knowing the full story, began to whisper, "Is that true? Is this hospital that corrupt? Don't listen to her. She's obviously here to cause trouble. I brought sunflower seeds. Want to share? Excellent idea."
This Ethan Reed is also Miss
Miller's family, the doctor said through gritted teeth. You're lying, my daughter is 30. How could she have a 20-year-old son? Besides, my son-in-law's last name is Dawson, Brenda shouted. Kevin had already hung his head in shame. The moment his mother mentioned Ethan, he knew it was over. He had already seen the news. Mom, maybe we should see Sis first before we talk about compensation, Kevin said quietly. What do you know? They'll only pay up if we make a big scene they can't control. Look at that fat-headed doctor. I bet he's taken plenty of bribes, Brenda said loudly, making sure the onlookers could hear. The doctor was so angry he was trembling. He couldn't take the old woman anymore. He shoved his phone in her face, his voice almost a roar. You old hag. See for yourself what kind of trash your daughter is. The video on the phone was playing the scene of Victoria and Ethan with the super glue, a specially enhanced high-definition version. The words Walter and Brenda were about to shout died in their throats. They stood with their mouths agape, eyes glued to the screen. This. Brenda was speechless. What a disgrace to the family. Walter's face turned beet red. He stormed out of the doctor's office in a rage. The shameful scene of Victoria and Ethan was like a sharp knife, slicing away their hypocritical facade and laying their true nature bare for all to see. No matter how shameless they were, they could feel their faces burning with humiliation. Amidst the chorus of contemptuous murmurs from the crowd, the Miller family scurried away from the doctor's office like stray dogs with their tails between their legs. 10. When they reached Victoria's room, they saw me packing my things to leave. Kevin blocked my path. Brother-in-law, you can't leave. Sincere, my dear son-in-law, please wait. It's all my daughter's fault. I'll make her apologize, Brenda pleaded, also blocking me. My face darkened. Get out of my way. Victoria and I are divorced. At these words, Brenda's expression changed. She rushed to Victoria's bed, grabbed her by the hair and yanked her up. You good-for-nothing, get up and apologize to Sincere. Ow, Victoria gasped in pain. Her partially healed wounds tore open again, and tears streamed down her face. Sis, you were too impulsive. If you divorce my brother-in-law, what about me? I just made the down payment on my house. How am I supposed to pay the mortgage without his help? Kevin complained, his tone self-righteous and heartbroken. But then they noticed the horrifying state of Victoria's wounds and were shocked into silence. Sis, you really went all out? I bet you can't hold anything in now, Kevin said, stunned. Brenda then rushed over to me, her eyes filled with pleading. My dear son-in-law, don't be angry. It's all her fault. I heard there's a new technique. They can surgically create a new passage, and it works just like a normal one. Kevin nodded vigorously beside her. Yes, and then you can do IVF and she can have 8 sons for you. I was speechless. I was utterly stunned by their words. I had never encountered such a bizarre family in my life. It was a real eye-opener. I used to think they were just greedy, but now I saw they weren't even human. How could they say such things? I repeated myself. Victoria and I are divorced. Do not contact me again. Brenda and Walter panicked. No, you can't leave. My daughter is in this state. If you abandon her now, what will she do for the rest of her life? I almost laughed. What she did with the rest of her life had nothing to do with me. She brought this upon herself. You've seen the video. She will leave this marriage with nothing. If you don't want this to become an even bigger public spectacle, you'd better get out of my way. Walter and Brenda froze for a moment, but Kevin was still relentless. No way, my sister was with you for so many years. You have to compensate her. You have to pay for emotional distress, nursing care, and nutritional supplements. I looked at him like he was an idiot, then pointed to Ethan in the other bed. He's the one who did this to your sister. You should be asking him. By now, a large crowd of onlookers had gathered outside the room. Many were taking out their phones to record videos. Some were even live streaming. Kevin's face flushed red, and then he turned to glare at Ethan. You son of a bitch, he threw a punch at Ethan. Walter and Brenda, seeing a new target, also started attacking Ethan. "How dare you do this to my daughter? I'll kill you, you animal. You've ruined my daughter. I'll end you." Ethan was beaten to a pulp, rolling off the bed and wailing in agony. "It was Victoria, that bitch, who seduced me. I'm a victim too. I've lost it all too. It's gone." Ethan cried miserably. "Victoria, I'm like this because of you, you bitch. I'll kill you. I can't even be a man anymore. I'm going to kill you." Ethan grabbed a metal stand and swung it at Victoria. Kevin kicked Ethan viciously in his wounded area, causing Ethan to let out an inhuman scream. Walter was even more sinister. He took the container of hot chicken soup he was carrying and poured it directly onto Ethan. Ethan collapsed on the floor, his back arched like a cooked shrimp. The scene descended into chaos. Shouts, wails, and screams filled the air. It was like a martial arts epic. I smiled, took out my phone, recorded a video for my records, and then squeezed my way out of the crowd. 11. Later, the hospital called the police. Walter, Brenda, and Kevin were taken to the station for questioning for assault and public disturbance. Ethan was rushed to the emergency room on the spot. After some frantic medical attention, he was moved to the ICU. Apparently, the chicken soup had been enhanced with high-tech ingredients, leading to an acute infection. It turned out to be cheap street vendor soup full of chemicals. Within a few days, Victoria and Ethan became internet famous. Streamers and influencers came to their hospital room to film content, turning it into a morbid tourist spot. Other patients and their families in the hospital all knew the story and would often point and stare at them through the glass door of their room. Occasionally, children would walk by and spit on the door. The hospital had no choice but to move her to a secluded room in a corner of the ward. I received a message from the hospital. Their last brawl had caused Victoria's wounds to reopen and worsen. It was now uncertain if even an artificial implant was possible. They asked me how to proceed, should they stitch it up completely or risk the procedure. Her parents were still in the picture, so of course, that choice was theirs to make. Under the dual torment of mental and physical anguish, Victoria completely lost her mind. She spent her days smashing things in her room, alternating between bitter crying and manic laughter. The doctors and nurses were too afraid to go near her. It suddenly occurred to me that being a widower would be quite nice. Why was I so hung up on divorce? It was like a great weight had been lifted. After about 10 days in the ICU, Ethan miraculously woke up. The first thing he did was demand compensation from Victoria. "Victoria, it's all because of you that I'm like this. Pay me, give me $1 million, or I'll kill you." Victoria laughed coldly. "That's because you couldn't control yourself. I have no money, only my life to give." Before she could finish, Ethan punched her in the face. Then Walter and Brenda rushed in and started beating Ethan. This time, Ethan wasn't so lucky. Several of his ribs were broken, and he was spitting up blood. He lost consciousness shortly after. By the time he was brought to the emergency room, Ethan had died from a combination of complications. His wounds had reopened. He had lost too much blood, his liver was ruptured, and his lungs were punctured. The doctors were unable to save him. For their part in his death, Walter and Brenda were convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to prison. The shock was too much for Victoria. She became completely insane, incontinent, and was eventually committed to a mental hospital. Later, unable to afford the high cost of treatment, she died in her bed in that hospital. Rumor has it that the walls of her room were covered with the name Sincere, carved over and over again. I just smiled faintly at these rumors and paid them no mind. With Ethan's death, Walter and Brenda were sentenced to 10 years, and my divorce case was quickly settled. In my lawsuit against Kevin, the evidence I submitted was overwhelming. The records of transfers between Victoria and Kevin were clear, and I was able to reclaim all the money. He was forced to sell the house he had just made a down payment on and sign an installment plan for the remaining debt. Walking out of the courthouse, I felt a sense of clean relief. The sun was shining brightly. The road ahead was long and full of possibilities.